Okay, today we will be starting Module 12, which is going to start talking a lot about statistics. So our first problem says, there were 21 participants in a recent study on personality traits. After being shown 4 images, 1, 2, 3, and 4, each participant selected the one that was most appealing to them. A says the image each participant selected appears below. Complete the frequency distribution for the data. So for this one, we're simply just going to count how many times it appears. So like the number 1 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The number 2 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The number 3 is 1, 2, 3, 4. And the number 4 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Part B says the images are associated with 4 personality traits, but not every image is associated with every trait. The table below shows the traits and the images associated with them. And then it asks how many participants selected an image that is associated with being indecisive. So then we go and we look at this table, and we see that indecisive is images 2 and 4. So we go back up here. We see 2 had 5 people, 4 had 6 people. We add them together, and we get 11 participants. Please remember at any point, if you need to slow the video down, you can pause it to catch up. Next, we have the following list gives the number of public libraries in each of 15 cities. Find the mean, median, mode, range, and name any outliers. So the very first thing we have to do is put them all in order numerically. Now I did this ahead of time, so I'm just going to go ahead and tell you how many of each occur in the order. We have 4 7s, 4 8s, 4 9s, a 10, and an 11. So that's all of it ordered numerically. So we're going to find the mean, median, mode, range, and then name any outliers. So the mean, or the average, is when you add them all together and you divide by the total number. So if you take these and you plug them into a calculator and you add them all up, you get 128. And there were 15 cities total, so we're going to divide by 15. So we get that that is equal to 8.533, and that just goes on forever. So we're going to round to the nearest hundredth, which would give us 8.53. Next, we do the mode, which is the ones that occur the most. There can always be more than one mode, or there could be no mode. In this case, we have 4 7s, 4 8s, and 4 9s. So our modes then are 7, 8, and 9. Then we do the range, which is when you take the biggest value in your data set and you subtract your smallest value in the data set to see how wide of a range this data set has. In this case, 11 is our greatest, 7 is our smallest, and we get that that is equal to 4, so our range is then 4. Then we do our median, and median just stands for the middle of the data set, which in this case, we just go end to end crossing out. So I get these two. We just keep going until we get to the middle. And in this case, we don't have a specific middle value, but they're both 8, in which case we would find the median or the mean of those two numbers. So then you would go 8 plus 8 divided by 2 is 16 divided by 2, which is 8. Now, in this case, you probably could have just said it was 8 because you already knew that. But I wanted you to see this method because if it was like 7 and 8 or 8 and 6, you would have to add them together and divide by 2 to find the median. And the last thing we have to do is find any outliers. This data set does not have any outliers, so we would just put none. And an outlier is just something that stands way out from the rest of the data set. So like if there was a 16 in here, that might be an outlier, or a 25 or something. Next, we have Brian has scored 77, 80, 89, and 81 on his previous 4 tests. What score does he need to on his next test? So that is average. His mean is 78. So we know that the mean is when you add all the data sets, or all of the numbers together and divide by the total number of data sets. In this case, we know that he's done 4 tests, but we're looking for 5 tests to get a mean of 78. So we go 77 plus 80 plus 89 plus 81 plus x, because that's what we're trying to figure out, is what he needs on that 5th test. And there will be 5 total tests, so we'll divide by 5. We want that to be equal to 78. So we just go ahead and we solve for x by multiplying by 5. So we get all of these numbers added together are 327 plus x is equal to 390. Subtract 327 off of both sides, and you get that x is equal to 63. So Brian would need at least a 63 on his test if he wants his average to be at least a 78. Next, we have the table below summarizes the amount of milk consumed by a sample of 39 families last month. For these families, what is the mean number of gallons of milk consumed? Round your answer to the nearest tenth. Now, you could do this 2 different ways, because the thing is we can't just write 3, 2, 7, 6, or whatever it is. Actually, 3 occurs 8 times in this data set. 2 occurs 10 times in this data set. So you could sit and write out 2 10 times, and then 3 8 times, and then 6 8 times, and 7 13 times. Or since we're just trying to find the mean, we could just multiply these numbers together, because we already know if I have 3 8 times, it's going to be 3 plus 3 plus 3 up to 8 times. And what is that doing other than multiplying by 8? So what we can do instead is 3 times 8 plus 2 times 10 plus 7 times 13 plus 6 times 8 divided by 39, because that's the total number of families in the sample, which gives us 183 divided by 39, which gives us 4.69, and it asks us to round to the nearest tenth, so then our final answer would be 4.7 gallons of milk is the average amount of milk consumed by these families. Okay. And the last thing that we're going to talk about is percentiles. So the first thing that we have to do here is put all of these numbers in order from least to greatest. So again, I did this ahead of time, so I'm just going to write them out. We have 20, 21, 22, 23, 25, 26, 27, 28, 30, 31, 32, 33, 35, 36, 37, 44, 46, 47, 49, and 50. And that asks us to find the 40th percentile and the 75th percentile. So one thing before we get started with percentiles is a little note that you need to know is if you get a whole number, find the average of those two. And I did not spell average right. And if you get a decimal, round up. Okay. In this case, we will not get a whole number, we will not get a decimal, so I won't get to give you an example of that, but that would be like if you got the number 1.86, you would round up to 2 and you would take the second number then. Let's do some percentiles. So we have the 40th percentile. To do that, we are going to take n, which which is going to be 20 in this case. And you're going to take that times your percentile divided by 100. And that's just to get it as a decimal. So in this case, we have n is 20. We're going to take that times 40 divided by 100, which is going to give us 20 times 0.4. And 20 times 0.4 is equal to 8. So we are going to take 8 and 9 and find that average. We'll go back and do that in just a second, because we're just going to do 75th really quick. Would be 20 times 75 over 100 is equal to 20 times 0.75 is going to give us 15. So we're going to take 15 and 16. So then to find our percentiles, we have to go back up here, and I have 8 and 9. So I have to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 are 28 and 30. And let's just go ahead and count these ones too, since we're there. So this would be 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16 right here. And we're going to find the average of those two numbers. So for the 40th percentile, we would get 28 plus 30 divided by 2 is equal to 58 divided by 2 is then equal to 29. So our 40th percentile there is 29 pounds. And then we do the same thing for 75. So we have 37 plus 44 divided by 2 would give us 81 over 2, which is going to be equal to 40.5. So that's our 75th percentile. So we have 29 and 40.5. And that is everything for 12.1 right now. Please be sure to go do your homework, and if you have any questions, please hold on to them, and I will be able to answer them tomorrow.